Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Ball is Round. I'm Hady Raphael, and tonight on the show, CF Montreal with a win in Dallas, injuries early in the season for Laurent Courtois, and the Canadian women's national team barely qualifies for the W Gold Cup semifinals. That and a lot more on episode 169 of The Ball is Round. And I'm joined by my two friends and co-hosts, Eve and Elias. Eve, how are you today?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm fine. Have you gotten better after that 3-0
Oh,
loss
yeah.
from the Wolves yesterday?
It's not the worst loss they could take because my mom is a big Newcastle fan. So I'm glad one of us had a perfect soccer weekend at least.
So you lost against your mom. Wow. Okay, good.
That's basically
Elias.
a theme of my life.
Elias, 0-0 in San Mames. You should be happy. It's very hard to go get a point from San
No,
Mames.
yeah, but it looks like Frankie and Pedri are out long term.
Ooh.
So I not 1 week of peace. That's all. But
Ooh.
the good news is that Barcelona Feminique are back next week, so at least I can look forward to that
At least you
because
can look forward
that's
to
the
that.
only
Exactly.
that's the only light in
Yeah.
my European soccer life right now. So
Nice. And of course, I'm pretty sure you already know that I'm super happy because we won
Because they
5-1.
spanked.
Ah,
Yeah.
5-1. But okay, it's the last in the league. So, but it's really nice because we're going to prepare. Marseille is going to be able to prepare themselves very well for Europa League this Thursday against
Hopefully.
Villarreal and their former coach Marcelino. So that's going to be
Mhm.
a great head to head. So I can't wait to watch that. So that's good. So guys, let's talk about what's going on here locally. So many things, so many good things, and some worrying things too with the Canadian women's national team. But we'll start with CF Montreal first. CF Montreal was away, of course, because CF Montreal and it's only in March, so of course they're away. They are away in Dallas, in the Toyota Stadium in Frisco, and we took a point in Orlando last time. Orlando got spanked after like 5-0 against Inter
Mhm.
Miami. Uh, and then Montreal was going to Dallas to try to get a result from there. So at that time, Laurent Courtois made only one change to his starting 11. So we can maybe pull up the starting 11 with Jonathan Sirois in goal. At the three center backs, we had Joel Waterman in the middle, George Campbell on the right, Gabriele Corbo on the left. In midfield, Samuel Piet and Mathieu Chouanière. As wing backs, we had Rouen on the right, Ariel Lassiter on the left. And as offensive midfielders, we had Bryce Duke and Mahala Opoku, Kwadwo Opoku. And up front, Matias Kokaro as a lone striker. Looking at that starting 11, were you surprised by something? We talked about it a bit last week, saying that is he going to make sure to do a lot of changes at first in order to establish his starting 11, or is he going to be sticking to his guns and start the same starting 11 again? It seems that he chose the latter option. Eve, are
Yeah.
you okay with that, or do you think something else should have been done?
I think based on the performance, the very, very resilient performance of quite a few of the players versus Orlando, I think it would have been a bit harsh to take most of them out of the starting lineup. Of course, Yankov was injured, so he had to come out. I think maybe the player who we most questioned his presence would be Bryce Duke, but he retained his position, and as we'll discuss later, it worked out well for Montreal. So overall, I'm not scandalized by his decision. Courtois, that
Okay.
is.
Elias, would you have liked to see something different? He did make a few changes on his bench, though. We saw
Yeah.
Julien Vilsan come in on the bench. Now, of course, as Yves said, it's because Yankov was injured. So at that point, Opoku gets in the starting 11. Then you need someone with that same profile on the bench. So do you think that's the reason why, or do you think he switched things up on the bench because he wants to involve everybody?
I think it's a bit of both. I think he was going to make that switch. I think he was going to switch up who's left out the roster regardless. I just think that, people like Dominic Yankov being left out of the squad entirely made his decision a bit easier. But I wouldn't have been I would have been very surprised if we had the same people left off the team sheet completely.
No, I agree. I agree. It's fun. I think it's a good problem for CF Montreal and for Laurent Courtois to have so much depth, and we'll talk about that during the show a bit later, for sure. Even if we did talk about it a bit, but this time I think we have a bit more data to talk about it even further. So let's start with the game. CF Montreal started the game strongly again. Not so many chances like in Orlando in the first 4 or 5 minutes. But still, we thought that CF Montreal was here for the win and to make sure that they get some points and they grab some points. So we didn't see just a low block, a compact block, just to start off the game. Yves, that sort of winning mentality or that aggressiveness in the beginning of the game, is that going to be the trademark of CF Montreal going forward, in your opinion?
I really hope so, because I think it's a good statement. I think especially when your fans are far away and they're not able to kind of throw their support behind the team. I think it's something that just gives that statement of intent, and it's kind of like, I hate throwing everything back to Wilfried Nancy, but of course we played our best soccer under him, so that's kind of why. But it's kind of like, we're coming to any stadium. We want to play our soccer on any pitch in MLS, and we can do that. So yeah, I do hope it's a trademark.
Yeah, I hope so too. But talking about, the comparison with Wilfried Nancy, Elias, there's a big difference in the way they play. Like Laurent Courtois, as of right now, of course, we only have 2 games, that we watched, but there's a big difference about CF Montreal team under Wilfried Nancy and CF Montreal team under Laurent Courtois, right?
Yes and no. I asked Joe Waterman about this because he was there for both the really, really good road games under Wilfried Nancy and the really, really bad ones last year. And we talked a bit about the difference between the two. And, these last 2 games felt a lot like not what just Montreal did 2 years ago, but what a lot of teams who have success on the road do, which is they start off strong, they try and catch you sleeping, but they never overextend themselves. And that was probably the biggest common thread of the last 2 games we saw with Montreal, is that no matter how forward they got, no matter how aggressive they attacked, they never looked stretched. They never looked like they were vulnerable to a counterattack. And it shows because they didn't really get countered all that much. Right? So I think that is the hallmark of a good team on the road. Now, they have to, again, we talked about, right? If this is the floor you're setting, you can only get better. Now, are you setting yourself up for disappointment? We don't expect the team to be unbeaten on the road, because let's be real, that's just
They are.
Okay, but come see me after the next 15 games. After 15 more games, if they're still unbeaten, then maybe. But in terms of at least the way they go about it, right? If they approach games this way, they're going to win a lot more games than they're going to lose on the road. And that's the kind of the blueprint that MLS has for road games.
Very interesting. I agree that it's a good way of starting the game to be aggressive, and I have a feeling that we're going to see a CF Montreal down the line being aggressive the whole 90 some minutes. I think that's the end line for that team, and I kind of like it. But it's, again, in my opinion, it's very different of what we've seen from Wilfried Nancy.
Totally.
It was more a possession-based, kind of team. With Laurent Courtois, it seems like high press, get the ball as fast as possible, play vertically, and try to get a goal as fast as possible, or as many goals as you can. So as of right now, of course, things can change. But let's go back to that game. Not much happened in the first 10 minutes. Even if CF Montreal had the most interesting half chances in a certain way, until that 11th minute, where Kwadwo Opoku gets the ball, fouls his defender, but still goes through, and then the defender falls directly on his knees directly, and he gets injured. Very,
quite
very
injured
worried.
By the looks of it.
Exactly. And we saw some pictures afterwards. It doesn't look good at all. No. Elias, how bad is that injury for CF Montreal going forward? Yes, it worked for CF Montreal in Dallas, and we talk about the results. CF Montreal won 2-1 in Dallas, but Opoku seems like a very, very important piece for Laurent Courtois. Losing him that early, and it seems for a bit of time right now. How bad is it?
Oh, I mean, we were expecting injuries at the beginning of the season. I think everyone was. The problem, like you saw in the team picture after the game, right? He's in a proper boot, which is, like Patrick said, right? He's in a walking boot. It looked to be like it was his ankle, just by the way, like that he interacted with the defender. But either way, he is your most promising young attacker, if you will. Him along with Kokoro. Now the two of them, are young, they're energetic, and they obviously going to bring a lot to the team. So we were talking earlier in the season how sometimes you're worried about players not getting minutes because it's too overcrowded. Now is the opportunity that a lot of youngsters have to step up. Jonathan Vincent is one of them, but what depending on the configuration of the team, right? Maybe this is a chance for some more midfielders to show what they can do as a 10 and kind of flex their muscles a little bit.
Interesting. Now you talked about, you just said the youngsters have to step up. Eve, is it only youngsters, or
no,
do you think someone like Mason Toye will maybe get his chance?
Yeah. I think that Mason Toye is probably still really low in the pecking order, unfortunately. So I think it would take a true injury crisis. And as we'll talk about, Jules-Anthony Vincent definitely seized his opportunity with both hands. So that might make things a little more complicated for a guy like Mason Toye. But with the grueling travel involved in this early part of the season, I don't see why Mason Toye couldn't start a match or potentially sub in, like, let's say Jules-Anthony Vincent starts to replace Opoku in the next match in a very similar lineup. Why couldn't he come in if Montreal needs a goal against Miami, which they may well need?
Interesting. Now, it's funny because Vincent didn't seem anywhere in that pecking order that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw, the impact that he had yesterday on the game. But let's talk about that impact, because he came in on the 11th minute, as we said, for Kwadwo Opoku, and he seems really pumped up on the pitch right away, trying to prove that he has a place to get in that squad. And we saw maybe 9 minutes later, that I think the Courtois ball, if we want to say it.
We don't know what that is yet.
But it seems like a bit of playing vertically and just going straight for goal. And we saw Waterman get the ball, give it to Vincent through the lines. Vincent in the middle of the pitch, through ball to Rouen on the right. Rouen gets the ball, waits for his teammates to come into the box, crosses it. The cross is deflected a bit, but arrives to Matthias Kokoro. Kokoro really controls it and just gives it on a silver platter for Jules-Anthony Vincent, who volleys it straight into the goal. Great goal for Jules-Anthony Vincent, but also great team goal, because you see the build-up of that goal. It's in open play. It seems like something that they have rehearsed in training, and that's what's really interesting. Don't you think? Don't you think so, Eve?
Definitely. I felt like everybody knew exactly where they were supposed to be during this play. Even though nobody could necessarily anticipate a deflection on the cross, Matthias Kokoro was perfectly placed to receive the deflected cross. So it very much felt like a rehearse. At first, I wondered if it had been like a really heavy touch from Kokoro when he received the ball, but the more I look, like he didn't try to chase his touch or anything like that. So I think it was like it must have been planned for the supporting striker to follow up and be there to take the shot. And all credit to them, it worked. All credit to Ruan as well, of course, for bombing up the right-hand side as he did. So I think you're right. This feels like a little bit more deliberate than just luck of the draw.
Yeah, and we have Patrick that says, and we say hi to all the listeners that are here. We'll talk about everything that you've said, but in time, of course, we don't want to rush the program. But Patrick says, but they don't force the vertical play like last year. They seem to pick their sports. What do you think, Elias? It seems, yes, they play vertically, but it seems like it's really done well in a certain way, even that early in the season, no?
Yeah, I mean, look, they definitely did. There were very few times where they accelerated vertically and kind of fell flat in their face, especially when they kind of had the ball to breathe, and then they said, "Okay, we're going now." It very, very rarely just broke down completely, um, and I think that's the most impressive part of these last two games is the fact that they're doing this against really good teams. Right, we were expecting these games to be okay. We'll lose these, and then maybe you get a point or two in the other games, right? These were all but written off by everybody. So I think that yes, they're going vertically quickly, but I agree they do seem to be a lot more composed when they go vertically, and it's not like yes, they're very assertive, like you said, they see the way to get forward and they go for it, but it's no longer like oh my God, if I don't go forward, I'm going to get benched, So I think they do have a lot more freedom. And I think with that and the fact that you have, Ruan, who was, if you look at Ruan from Orlando, Ruan from Dallas, there's two completely different, instructions that he had. He was much more reserved against Orlando. And yesterday he was flying at any the slightest provocation, like I'm gone.
Yeah.
So I think that it's good to have a fullback that can play both those roles efficiently. And when you have someone like Jordi Alba that you're facing up against next week, it's a good thing to have, and it's a good versatility. So yeah, I like that they seem so much more assured of themselves when they go forward, and they're like, if I don't have to go forward, I won't, but I can, so I will. And I think that's the essence of at least what Courtois ball will be on the road. At home, when they will be having 55, maybe even 60% possession, or at least they'll try to, might be a different story. But on the road, I love this.
Let's wait and see what we're going to get, what kind of CF Montreal we're going to get at home. It's far, far away from here. But
still like a month.
Let's talk about the wingbacks, because that's a question that I asked Laurent Courtois in a post-game presser, saying, was that a part of the plan to play Ruan, down the line and a lot, behind the defense? And he's like, it wasn't the plan specifically, but it's something that we studied and we knew we were going to have, spaces behind the defense. So it seems like it's something that they studied, even if it wasn't the main plan per se. But I feel, in my opinion, Eve, that we're playing a lot down the wings, because we talked about Ruan a lot, playing, the through balls to Ruan. But at the same time, we're playing a lot with Lassiter, but differently, because Lassiter brings up the ball forward and, tries his shots.
Doesn't necessarily run on.
Exactly, from outside the box. So it's kind of interesting, but it seems that the play of the team is really based on the wing backs. Do you think that's something is it enough to be a threat against all the teams in MLS to just have that game plan?
No, absolutely not. There are very stout wide defenses in MLS. I think of Cincinnati, who have just picked up DeAndre Yedlin. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but probably anyway. If it's not confirmed, it's like all but. So I think that there are defenses where your wingers are going to be shut down, or your wing backs, as it were. So I think it is very important to be able to diversify your attack, especially with the number of central midfielders that Montreal has on their roster, especially if you start kind of lumping in some players who we would have thought of as strikers into that role, or even some players who we've been playing as wingbacks into that role as well. For the number of players who occupy that position, I think like leaving them out of the build-up play is kind of doing a disservice to the talent that you have in your roster. So I like, while it can work for sure, and it worked against Dallas clearly, I don't think it's going to work, especially as well if you find yourself like against a really low block where your outside backs don't get the chance to be that dynamic because, you know, a more conservative team is coming in to defend you and they're not offering up that level of space, whether it's to carry the ball or whether it's to run onto one. That's when you need your midfield to kind of break those lines. So yeah, I think they are going to need to. I think that while they're on the road and the home teams are going to want to play like a more aggressive style, I think it's definitely something that they can get away with in the short term.
Yeah, we've seen a lot from the attacking midfielders, Elias, in those two games. You know, some good things and some bad things, and we'll talk about it a bit later. But we haven't seen much offensively from the double pivot from Piet and Choinière offensively. Do you think, Elias, that at one point we're going to have to see some creativity from those two at one point, because it's not going to be enough to have just, you know, the flanks and those attacking midfielders? Or do you think that it can work even if those two are not really involved in the offensive plays?
I think it depends on what you ask of that second striker /10 that Mahala or Vincent was going to be. Or if Vincent dropped deep, and Mahala was dropping very deep.
Yeah.
Which means that, you know, they can combine with Bryce Duke and then you leave Choinière and Piet with the role of kind of just managing everything ahead in front of them, which I don't hate. I do think that, you know, Choinière can do more. I do think Piet can do a bit more. But if you have someone like Vincent or someone like Opoku who can drop deep and who can play in that role in those half spaces, I don't mind. I do think if you have two out-and-out strikers, if you have, for example, if you're lining up with Kokoro and Martinez, for example, if you're starting the game off like that, and then you have, you know, whoever, Yankov or Duke as your 10, then yeah, you need someone to get up there. You need someone like Mathieu Choinière who has the legs and who has the technical ability to go out there and support in more advanced stage of the midfield, because you have proper nines that are going to be bothering the back line instead of dropping deep to, you know, to take part in link-up play. So I think it depends on who the attackers are and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because against Dallas, I had no problem. Because Jean-Anthony Vincent dropped deep. That's how the first goal was created, right? He dropped deep and then he kind of unleashed for one. I do think against teams that are maybe going to start funneling into the middle when they start realizing how good the fullbacks are, that this is where Victor Wanyama is going to become very important. Because it's going to let Mathieu Choinière run forward. It's going to give Samuel Piet the freedom to kind of put those crosses in. I think that's where he's going to become invaluable. Because right now, in terms of midfield penetration, like straight up the middle, there's not much going for them. Because there's no one that can, you know, dribble 4 or 5 guys on the team. There's no, and your best ball distributor, who is Victor Wanyama, hasn't played yet. So maybe they're saving that card in the back pocket for a team that does have really strong fullbacks. I would have thought that it would have been against Miami. I still think it will be, because, you know, you have, even if DeAndre Yedlin's gone, you have someone like Julian Gressel who's right there, who was probably going to be playing on the flank now instead of playing in the midfield. So again, those are two of the best, you know, flank players in the league on the same team, which means if you have any offense, it's going to have to be created in the middle. Which means now, is this a time for Victor Wanyama to come on, especially given how the significant lack of pace that Miami has is going forward?
That's interesting, but I think also that it opens up a lot a lot of space behind that defense, behind Jordi Alba, behind DeAndre Yedlin, or behind Julian Gressel. So, a player like Ruan can have a field day against Miami. If
you're gonna go shot for shot with Jordi Alba, that's the thing, right? How much are you willing to give up as Ruan, or as Courtois planning out how the flank is gonna go? If you're planning to go back and forth with Jordi Alba,
not back and forth, because don't forget that on the right, and we talked about it last week, you have not only George Campbell, but you have also Mathieu Chouanière that plays a lot on the right flank, also defensively, and plays a very big role defensively on the right. So to give that freedom to someone like Juan. So I think that's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be a tactical nightmare for both, mostly for Laurent Courtois. I think not more than
it's definitely his biggest challenge.
It's going to be a big challenge tactically, I think. Yeah, exactly. Moving on, and Yves, we do have what's really interesting after that goal is that CF Montreal didn't back down. They didn't really. Most of the time, you say, the very dangerous moments usually are right after the goal, just before the halftime and just after the halftime. Usually that's the most dangerous times in soccer. We didn't see any letdown from CF Montreal, from the team, from the players, or anything right after the goal, even if they scored first. And even CF Montreal even pushed a bit more, getting that free kick on the 24th minute with that shot from Ariel Lassiter and that save from the Dallas keeper. Talking about free kicks, we've seen Ariel Lassiter take a free kick. We also saw a bit later Bryce Duke take a free kick. Do you think that Laurent Courtois is still trying to find?
Definitely.
Yeah, that's
I'm gonna end your sentence for you. Yeah, definitely. Yes, I think. I mean, a free kick taker has been a hard thing to find in Montreal for how many years now? Go ahead. Or set piece taker, I should say. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
How long have we had a hard time finding a good set piece taker in Montreal?
Wow, it's been a while.
Yes. So I ended your sentence before you ended your sentence. I assumed that you were going on about set piece takers. Was I correct, or was I wrong?
I'm not really. I think that it's interesting to see that he's giving the chance to a lot of people.
I think it's normal,
a lot of players, and I think it's normal. But at one point, most of the time, you find your set piece taker at one point. So I think that he is going to find his, and I wonder who it's going to be, because it's going to be very interesting. We do have just one comment. Wellington Sauvé asking if the show is interactive. Yes, it is interactive. We will talk about all the points that you mentioned a bit earlier, but of course we need to find the right time to talk about them. So yes, and we do have a segment, as we said at the beginning of the pod, about injuries. So most of the comments are regarding the injuries. So we'll talk about that there. And of course, your point about Bryce Duke is coming right now. That's the next point. So we do have on the 36th minute, Bryce Duke that does a 1-2 with Jules Anthony Vilsa, who tries a shot in a very closed angle. Really good save from FC Dallas keeper, but it was never going to be a goal. What's really interesting though is the style of play that Bryce Duke has. Yes, it can be very frustrating, 100%, because he's not physically tough enough to handle any physical challenge, unfortunately, even if he got better at this. But his vision is really, really interesting. This technical ability is way above average. We do have Wellington Sauvé that says, we have a team that can be competitive this year. His only concern is Bryce Duke. His performance is not up to the standard we expect from him. He should not be among the starting 11 of this team. The bench is deep this year. What do you think, Yves, about that statement from Wellington?
I mean, I think he was probably coming into this season with the most tentative with the most tentative place in the starting 11, and he kind of had it by default almost last season. Just by virtue of other injuries and really nobody living up to that position. I think with the addition of Yankov, it's even more in peril for him. He has moments that are so good, but then it's just that lack of consistency, I think, that really holds him back. And then I think as well that trickles on into an effect of, slower decision making. Like there was a moment early in the match where I was like, come on, Bryce, do something. Like pass your ball or take your shot. Do whichever one you're going to do. And it was quite early in the match. I forget what moment it was, but and it kind of reminded me a little bit of when we saw Zachary Bogiard in like 2021, when he was kind of going through that phase, of either not making the right decision or taking too long to make a decision. Kind of reminded me of that. And then he found his groove, obviously, in the moments that he did get in 2022. Of course, he wound up being benched for Alistair Johnston. So I think for him, a lot of his progress is going to depend on the coaching team's ability to maintain his confidence. That's kind of what I'm starting to sense based on like how this season has started as far as his decision making goes.
Interesting. Do you agree with that, Elias? Or do you have anything to add?
I mean, we talked about it a bit last week against Orlando, and I think his game against Dallas was honestly better than his game against Orlando. I think I saw more things that I liked from Bryce Duke against Dallas. The toughest part of integrating into any system is understanding what's needed of you, right? And I talked about last week how Bryce Duke didn't really get what was needed from him under Hernan Losada, and this year already it looks like he understands. And the execution will come in due time. And Laurent Courtois kind of reiterated this, that with repetition, that's going to be fine because we know how good he is with the ball. It's understanding what's needed of him, right? And he's in the right spot a lot of the time. And
exactly. That's what's really interesting about him.
Exactly. His lack of pace last year meant that when he was in the wrong spot, you can't make up for that. So this year he compensated with his positioning has improved significantly this year. And I think that, the small, déchet technique, the little mistakes, and maybe the hesitation that you kind of see from him, that will all iron itself out. And I do think that the fact that they already have, 4 points kind of takes the pressure off of him, and that he can maybe continue to just learn. Once you get into the nitty gritty of the season, your expectations are going to go up. But I think that all in all, he's on the right track. You can't expect Georgi Mihailovic right now. You can't expect, Carlos Gil right now. So I think that, I'm not saying he's going to reach that kind of level, but I'm saying that he's going to become more and more dependable because he already understands his role in the team. The technical stuff and the decision making, like you said with the CBG, it'll come.
Yeah, I think it will come too. I still think that I don't see a Georgi Mihailovic and Bryce Duke. For me, I see something completely different. Because it's not someone that's going to be as
goal scoring touch.
Yeah, but it's not going to be someone that's going to be as physically tough. He's never going to be someone that's going to be as physically tough as Georgi Mihailovic or as Mathieu Choignard, because he's really tough, Mathieu Choignard. Even if he was very frail at the beginning, he's very, very tough right now. I don't think we're going to see that. Yeah, sorry about that.
Honestly, it's probably not far off. But it's just
but it's true. It's true. I'm sorry. It's very tough as a word. The word is a very, very aggressive, but still, I don't think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see. I'm going very, of course, very far off, but I think we're going to see someone that's, the Kevin De Bruyne kind of player. Again, not as good, please, but like. That player that's able to slow the game down and then gives a through ball that's, creates something completely different. That's the type of player that we'll see, I think, from Bryce Duke at one point if he continues his progression, in my opinion. So
I do agree with Valentin that I don't think he's going to end up in Europe. But I do think he's going to become a very, very solid MLS player. I think that's well within the realm of possibility, a consistent starter. But I do think I agree with you that the European part of it, I don't know. Again, we'll have to see different parts of him develop. But 100% he has the more than enough potential to be a very, very high-level MLS player.
Exactly. And he says Bryce will be flop. This guy has what it takes technically, but his game is still below the standards. Still expects to play in Europe. As Elias said, I agree with that statement, and we agree with you, Wellington. We talked about that shot from Jules-Anthony Vilsaint in a closed angle, saved by the Dallas keeper. It goes in a corner. The corner is taken by CF Montreal. There's a bit of a confusion that the ball falls to Joel Waterman. He's in the 6 yards and shoots the ball. Great save from the for the FC Dallas keeper, and it's still 1-0. How big of a chance was that, Eve? For me, if that goal had gone in, I think we would have seen a very different game afterwards, in my opinion.
Well, you know how I feel about a 2-0 lead.
Yeah, but still, the game would have been completely different.
It would have been completely different. Obviously, knowing how the half ended, it would have been a very different halftime talk for sure from Laurent Courtois. Yeah. I mean, Dallas would have had no choice but to throw the kitchen sink at Montreal. Would have exploited a lot more. Offered up a lot more space for guys like Rouen to exploit. So it certainly could have gone differently, but as we all know, it didn't.
No, exactly, it didn't. FC Dallas didn't show much, until that 41st minute with Musa, the new signing, the Croatian, who gave the ball to Farrington. Farrington shot from outside of the box. It was an easy save for Jonathan Sirois. How did you think Montreal handled? Do you think, in your opinion, sorry, Elias, Montreal handled FC Dallas? Or do you think that, in a way, FC Dallas wasn't really crisp enough in their passes, or reactive enough, or interesting enough building up plays?
I think it's a bit of both, right? You talk about how Dallas did look off, but again, Orlando looked off too.
Yeah.
Once again, right? They didn't shoot the lights out, but Mathieu Chouinard and Samuel Piette did the very, very good job as a double pivot, keeping the midfield out of sync. Right? It looked like, again, just like Orlando, it never really looked like, yes, Orlando had a lot of the ball in the second half, but never really looked like Montreal was just way out of their depth. They still handled the majority of the threats. And again, yeah, there were some good chances, but Montreal was never scrambling because it was one chance, and then it took Orlando a while to develop another one. Same thing with Dallas, right? There was never like they had, 4 or 5 good chances inside 5 minutes or something like that, where they were just like, oh, you'd feel a goal coming. Like, no. And I think a lot of that goes down to the fact that the work rate in the midfield is so high. And I think that's also gonna, I don't want to go back into Bryce Duke discussion again, but those two guys running their lungs out does kind of help Bryce Duke's lack of athleticism.
Yeah.
But again, you have to give credit to Mathieu Chouinard and Samuel Piette, who did a fantastic job against, honestly, one of the best two-man midfields in the Western Conference, with Iramendi and Fraser. So
yeah, he was a bit injured. He got removed at halftime. But yes, the first half.
Right? They were played off the field, but you could tell that Mathieu Chouinard and Samuel Piette were with them every step of the way, and they didn't look on the back foot at all. And I think that that definitely says something.
Interesting. Now, I like the fact that you talk about the midfield, the CF Montreal midfield, being able to handle the FC Dallas midfield, because not a lot of people realize that, and I completely agree with you, because defensively, Piette Chouinard have been really outstanding for CF Montreal, and their behind the scenes work in a certain way helped that team develop some very good offensive chances, because they were okay leaving the defensive part to those two in a certain way. So I kind of like your analysis. Moving on, 46th minute, and that's where FC Dallas woke up with a cross that fell directly to Kamungo. Kamungo with his head gives a pass to Musa. Musa scores. At first, the goal is ruled out by VAR, and then it's reviewed, and then it's given to FC Dallas 1-1. At that point, Eve, first of all, talk to me about the goal, but also about the VAR decisions. You agree with everything that has happened. A lot of people don't. I'm very interested to have your opinion.
So I always find it really hard, like, because of the angles that are available to us in MLS. Like, they don't have necessarily a camera that follows the line of the ball or the offside line. So it's a little bit more challenging to tell, like, what is a true offside and what is not. So I tend to kind of try and hold my tongue on the VAR decisions of offside at the end of the day, because, like, they're not busting out, the little lines and the rulers and all that for us to see, like, the physics behind the decision. So for me, like I said, I just don't feel comfortable pronouncing on it. That being said, it felt like a really well worked piece, assuming everyone was on side, let's say, because obviously we had the player drifting off the wide defender who just kind of found himself in no man's land with a very open header to cross the ball. Pedro Musa was going to scare the crap out of us. I think we were all nervous of him coming into this match. And it was obviously just José Roy in front of him at his mercy, kind of. So for me, it was a really well-worked play from FC Dallas.
Yeah, I agree. It was very well worked from FC Dallas. Oh, wow. I had trouble talking. I have trouble talking today. But really well-worked play from FC Dallas. I'm not... For me, I didn't see an offside position, so I'm not going to go in. For people that didn't agree with the VAR decision, in my opinion, I agreed with it. I was like, okay, you know what? He's not offside. Sorry about that, but he's not. What do you think, Elias?
Yeah, no, we've had the offside VAR discussion a bunch of times on this podcast.
Yeah, we did.
We could spend the next 3 hours debating it.
Hey, for one, good night.
Exactly. Nobody's in the mood to have this long spiel about pro lines, anti lines. I, for one, love the fact that there's no lines in MLS. I don't think he was offside. Because Musa was clear. I don't think that's where the offside was. I think it was on Kapunga in the first ball, the initial ball. And look, he was perfectly in line. I love that CF Montreal try and get this offside trap going. This is the first time it's bit them in the ass. I don't think it'll be the last. But again, it also saved them a number of times against Orlando. So I still see it as a net positive. You look at the amount of times that they've caught teams out. They caught Dallas out a couple times as well. And nothing ended up manifesting. So I think that all in all, I'm okay with it. It is what it is. You live by the offside trap, you die by the offside trap. And
yeah.
Interesting. I agree with you too. I don't think they were playing the offside trap on that play, but
no, but
it was awfully deep to be playing an offside
firm,
trap.
Right?
Yeah,
they hold a very firm line always, and if it's not necessarily a trap, but just
Yeah, because on a free kick you have to play that way, or else you're just gonna you can't.
Or everyone's going to be onside for sure.
Exactly. You can't put everybody onside. But yeah, no, I agree with you, Elias. 1-1 at that point, and there's a shift in momentum at that point for FC Dallas, who created a bit more. We saw that, with the 5 minutes, because there was 6 minutes of stopping time or something like that, 7 minutes, I think. And Sealy got a chance. A very good chance. That Sealy was the goal scorer and the winning goal scorer for FC Dallas in the previous game. He got a chance, and it was saved by Sirois at the 52nd minute. His feet didn't really connect with the ball enough to make it, powerful enough, his shot. But still, a warning sign for CF Montreal right before the halftime. Thank God Jonathan Sirois was here again.
And thank God the whistle blew.
Yeah, we'll talk about Jonathan Sirois a bit later, because there's so many things that he did after, so we're not going to spoil it right now. Halftime at that point, 1-1. Yves, what would be your message to the players in case you were Laurent Courtois? Because they did have a very good half, but unfortunately...
But they lost momentum at the end, yeah. I think definitely it would be addressing kind of regaining that momentum that they lost towards the end of the match. Of course, the FC Dallas fans, I think they were maybe having some struggles with some calls that were going in certain directions until the VAR call, of course. So, it definitely, I don't think was an easy atmosphere for the players to be in. So I definitely would have wanted to kind of shore up that momentum as well, kind of as Elias said a minute ago, it was such a robust battle in that midfield. I think just kind of hammering it home to Saint-Piet and Mathieu Chouanière, like just lock it down, just absolutely protect everyone. I would have said to Rouen, okay, we're tied 1-1, so we're basically back to the starting gates. Anytime you can bomb forward, bomb forward. And almost like back in the day when Mauro Biello would say to the players, give the ball to Nacho, kind of like that. Anyway, that's an ironic
more
or less, I think, the gist
it is an ironic thing.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh, it's that. Ooh. I've gone and said it now on the internet. I can't take it back.
Everybody heard it, so.
Now we did see a lot in the recent years. We saw CF Montreal very confused coming out of the dressing room in the second half. We didn't see that yesterday with Laurent Courtois. Do you think that's a sort of a game changer, Elias, if our team comes back from the dressing room really pumped and really concentrated? Because for a lot of teams, and I'm talking about soccer worldwide, not only in MLS, even in Europe, for a lot of teams, right after that, the halftime, it's always a very difficult moment. So do you think that could be a very good thing for Laurent Courtois' team?
I think it's important to remember that Laurent Courtois is also learning. He's also developing as a coach. And we talked about after the Orlando game where he kind of missed the mark on his halftime adjustments, where he didn't anticipate the Cartagena substitution, and they were on their back foot. This was the exact opposite, right? He clearly learned from that Orlando game, and they were shot out of a cannon to start that second half. It was very much like the start of the game. They were on the front foot. They won the ball high up. They did everything that you want to do when you start a period. So yeah, it's important to remember that sometimes Laurent Courtois is going to make some mistakes. The important thing is that he learned from them, especially as a young coach. And everything I saw from the first 15-20 minutes indicates that every time you see Laurent Courtois makes a mistake, he's going to actively work to learn from it.
Yeah.
And in that way, you're kind of also avoiding maybe the hubris that a lot of more experienced coaches have. Like, I know what I'm doing. It's like, no, he's still a young coach. He's still, learning his trade.
Well, this is his first
probably much more
first team job. Yeah.
First team professional job, right? So I think he's much more open if he goes like, all right, I messed that up, and now I learn and I improve. So I think that's one kind of double-edged sword where you may be prone to more mistakes, but you will also have somebody that is willing to learn from their mistakes. So I think that was my biggest takeaway from that opening of the second half. It made me very happy.
I was very happy too, even if it was kind of the time where FC Dallas got the most chances, the first 15 minutes coming from halftime. Yes, of course, that was that Lassiter shot on target right after halftime at the 47th minute. But then there was, Junkwa having that shot on the 48th with a great save from Jonathan Sirois. We saw also on the 58th minute, Kamungo and Sealy both had shots saved by Sirois. But when you look at the quality of chances of FC Dallas during the whole game, they had only one shot in a 6-yard box. Yves, all the shots on target were from outside the area. So that's how compact CF Montreal was, but still being able to create offensively, right?
Yeah, I think it was a really robust line. Kind of like Elias said, you hold your line and you stick to it. And it's very much, I think, a bend and don't break mentality. I think similar to Orlando, I do think that FC Dallas targeted George Campbell's side a little bit more than they did the other side of the defense. However, it felt a lot more resolute than it did versus Orlando, despite the offensive liberty that Rouen was given. I don't know if it was the additional coverage of Mathieu Choignard. Maybe he was just a little bit more comfortable in his second game of the season, and he was able to back up the role a bit more. But regardless, it felt like everybody was in the right place to prevent quality chances for Dallas. Although, I have to wonder, I was so underwhelmed by Dallas as a whole during that match that a part of me wonders, if they... Right? Yeah, exactly. So a part of me wonders, if this would have been a different match at a different point in the season, and maybe for Montreal too. When Montreal had kind of gotten their bearings a little more under Courtois. But unfortunately, we'll never know, and because we only play FC Dallas once a year, if that.
Once every 3 years. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's some Western Conference teams who play every year, and there's some we don't play for 3-4 years. So you never know.
When was the last time Montreal played LAFC? I can't remember the last time.
Was that under Thierry Henry? Maybe.
I don't remember.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah, no, there's all kinds of Western Conference teams we never see. The only one we see every year is Vancouver. Anyway, yeah, I forget where I was going with my story. The gist is, yes, the line was robust. George Campbell was targeted. I think he did better this match. I think Rouen was significantly more dynamic, but was still able to help out. And I think perhaps as well, Mathieu Choignard's support maybe was just a little bit more stabilized than it had been versus Orlando.
Yeah. So Patrick says we played LA in 2022, guys. So
played the Galaxy, not LAFC.
I don't know.
They lost 4-0 to the Galaxy, but they didn't play LAFC though.
Yeah.
My memory is not that good with matchups.
I'm an old lady. I only remember the one where Nacho scored a hat trick and then they still managed to concede 5.
Now let's continue with the rest of the game. 59th minute. I think this is a very important play. And that's the second goal, of course. First of all, it starts with Mathieu Choignard winning the ball and giving it to Rouen. Rouen finds Bryce Duke. And we talked about Bryce Duke a bit earlier in his vision. That nutmeg to make sure and give it back to Duke down the space, down the line, that was a beauty. A really beautiful, very beautiful from Bryce Duke, who created that chance and the start of that chance for Rouen. Rouen, the speedster, really went down the line very, very fast, through ball from outside of the foot to Joseph Martinez. The Venezuelan makes it 2-1 for CF Montreal. What a goal. Great play from Bryce Duke. Great play from Rouen, and first goal for Joseph Martinez. That's how we won the game. Elias, it seems like a story that you write for the children, and that you say, this was a magical moment and stuff like that. Honestly, what a great play and what a great way of winning your first game on the road.
Oh yeah, it was great. Every part of that play was perfect. And that's what I was talking about with, it's what we're talking about Bryce Duke, where, if he can consistently operate in that space, that's what we need from him. And that's where he understands that's what's needed from him. That's the biggest difference from last year. Now it's just about making those plays. We saw it. We know he can make those plays. Now it's about consistently doing it. But the Rouen, the heads up play, the fact that, Martinez didn't make his run full speed off the bat, and he kind of timed it perfectly.
Oh my God. I was there.
Because if he would have sprinted there, you alert the defender right away and he kind of reacts. But you saw him, Martinez was practically jogging to start his run. And then once the ball was played, he accelerated. So but that's experience, right? That's the difference between him and, a promising young striker, where they see the space, they're going to gun for it. And then the center back had a head start. Martinez almost caught him off guard. So everything about that play, from the ball to Rouen picking his head up, finding it, the finish, everything was perfect. And I haven't used that sentence for CF Montreal in a long time, but every part of that play was chef's kiss. It was great.
Yes.
And it's nice to have someone like Joseph Martinez. And Patrick says if Joseph gets 2-3 chances a game, he's going to score 15 to 20 goals.
My
What
God.
do you think,
Don't
Elias?
get my hopes
What do
up
you think,
like that.
Eve?
Don't get my
Sorry.
hopes up like
I
that.
want to hear pessimistic Eve on that.
No.
No.
No, like don't get like I think what we saw on that goal are those strikers' instincts that were so cruelly missing from Montreal last year. Like the time, like his ability to hold his run so perfectly. You know, that was something that we had been starving for, truly. And obviously the finish was just perfect.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know like if he's gonna. I don't know how long it's going to take him to get up to speed to get that many chances, and as well, I'm not sure like when he's going to get that many chances as well. Just against other opposition. Like I said, I think we caught Dallas on a really off week. And I think it is going to be more challenging against other teams in MLS this season. So I'm just not convinced that the number of chances for Joseph Martinez are going to be there, particularly if a guy like Kokoro, who obviously went out injured, so perhaps Joseph Martinez is going to get more time than I think. But yeah, I just don't know if the time is going to be there. But I'll take it. If he can score 15 or 20 goals, I will be the happiest girl in Montreal.
That's gonna be a story to follow. Hopefully, Patrick, you're right, and he'll score between 15 and 20 goals. I think if he scores 7
Patrick,
or 8, we'll be very happy.
Patrick, I did look it up. Montreal played LAFC and lost 4-2 in 2019. They played in 2018. LA won 5-3. They're supposed to play in 2020, but COVID happened. They have not played
They
since.
played LA Galaxy, though, in 2022, and they got spanked 4-0.
And they lost 4-0.
Okay, we've used the word spanked a lot on this podcast today. I'm going to have to stop using it. I'm really sorry.
I was on the same road trip where they beat the Sounders 4-0 at the same time. It was a very hot and cold.
That was I don't know. West Coast road trips are always like a mixed bag.
Road trip,
it's always tough. It's always tough, and we're gonna have another West Coast trip in that 6-game span with going to Seattle. The 6th game away, so that's going to be very, very tough. So let's continue with that game. Rouen had a number of chances, 3 to be exact. So one, in the first half, unfortunately, his pass was not, on point, even if he had space to shoot the ball or even, cross the ball, and he didn't do that. The second time was his great pass to Martinez. And then the third on the 64th minute with Rouen trying to cross the ball, a low post cross, very low. Unfortunately, Joseph Martinez couldn't connect with it. At that point, I feel that Rouen should have shot the ball on that third opportunity. Yeah, that's something that he's going to have to learn.
Yeah,
to
it
really
was a
take
tight angle.
Yeah.
It was maybe an angle that would have favored a Romel Kyoto more. But it was a bit of a tight angle, but I don't disagree with potentially shooting.
Yeah. Now, 67th minute, that's when, Dallas, you get a chance with Musa really shooting a shot that's not very powerful or anything, but it, Sirois fumbles it a bit and then catches it.
Yeah.
That was a bit scary from Jonathan Sirois, but, thank God nothing really happened. And then Montreal really controlled the rest of the game. Really, it was really smooth. They weren't really trying to score a third one. We were just controlling, asking Dallas to do whatever they can, score a goal. It was very tough for Dallas to break down that low block from CF Montreal until that corner. 85th minute, corner from Dallas. Tafari, the commentator called him Tafari, but for me it's Tafari. The central defender gets a header, and Sirois is right there, right on the line, saves it. How good was Jonathan Sirois for the team again on Saturday, Eve?
Massive, absolutely massive. obviously, I think we've talked a lot about kind of the room he still has to develop in his game, particularly when it comes to his on the ball play, which is, of course, so important for a modern goalkeeper this day and age. But as far as his reflex saving, I think his positioning is improving, and his ability to make those show-stopping saves, he is up there. So definitely another massive weekend for him. So all credit.
Yeah. What's the ceiling for Jonathan Sirois? Wellington says, I hope Jonathan Sirois has a good agent. The guy is a real deal. If he keeps performing this way, he will not be in Montreal for a long time. He will end up somewhere in Europe. Elias, we know how hard it is, the transfer market for goalkeepers. Yeah. It's not something, but we've seen a lot of moves from goalkeepers in MLS to Europe, mostly to the Premier League, with Zach Steffen, with Matt Turner, and with what's the
Georgi Petrovic.
Sorry, I was looking for the name.
Petrovic I was thinking of Gaga Slonina as well. There are so many. There's so many goalkeepers.
Wow, nothing you mentioned.
Yeah, but mostly all directly to the Premier League. We haven't seen any goalkeepers going to another league.
No.
Do you think a player like Jonathan Sirois could be interesting for a European team at one point, or do you think it's a bit of a stretch, Elias?
The thing is, it's so technical in Europe. That's the only thing that's from a shot stopping perspective. I think he has more than enough potential to merit, consideration in Europe. The thing is, in Europe, you have to be almost as good, if not as good, as an outfielder with your feet. Yeah. And he still has a lot of work to do with that. From the short, 10-foot passes that you play to your center back, yeah, that's fine because you're a professional soccer player. That's not the problem. The problem is, can you break lines consistently? Can, you see your fullback 30, 40 yards away, can you ping it to his feet without blinking? Right? And that's still where he needs to work. From a shot stopping perspective, I mean, hell, we see it every single week, right? That's not the issue. His instincts are getting better. His technique is good. He's not massive, but his technique and his positioning are very, very impressive. It's just, how good are you with the ball at your feet, especially if you're not going to be, on a top team where you have to kind of pick your chances and maybe hit back on the counter, and you have to be able to find people, someone is down the field. That's the only thing that's going against him. So that's the thing he has to really focus on. It's also the matter of the national team, right? Matt Turner was Zach Steffen. They were both heavily involved in the national team.
Great transition, because that was my next question for Yves. What does he need to do still to be called up at Mauro Biello, knowing that 23rd of March, that's when the Canadian men's national team will play their place in the Copa America by playing against Trinidad and Tobago. Has he done enough, in your opinion?
Well, apparently Milan Borjan is made of titanium, and he's just going to be there until we're all old and gray. So part of me is like, no, there's no hope, as bad as it sounds. I kind of wonder now, because we're in the post John Herdman era, as to who's going to fill that third goalkeeper position, because I do think second is still Max Crepeau's to lose, and really by rights it should be first, but I don't know if Milan Borjan is going to get the call for March. I think we've all been consistently surprised to see him get the call ever since the World Cup ended, so I've given up on kind of assuming. That being said, what more does he have to do? Probably, as Elias said, you need to be involved in the play, especially with a national team where you want to aspire to play on the world stage, right? So you need to be capable with the ball at your feet. I'm not saying that Milan Borjan is great with the ball at his feet, to be clear, but he obviously has established himself.
Not good at all.
No, but he's obviously established himself. He has a history, leadership, so on and so forth. But I think, going forward, I would hope anyway that Canada is going to look for their new number one to be a much more modern goalkeeper, Max Crepeau is pretty good with the ball at his feet, I would say. Like, I don't think he's Ederson or anything like that for Brazil. But, I think he's pretty good. But I think to be in contention now, you have to add that to your register. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. Let's wait and see how it develops. The thing is, of course, right now for the national team, you have Borjan that's still doing very good with Slovan Bratislava that's first in the Slovakian league right now with like 15 points ahead of the second, or even more, 16 points ahead of the second team. But also Dean Sinclair, who I watched the game Minnesota Columbus, and Sinclair was really, really impressive. So
yeah.
So
Good
also,
point.
I think, Sinclair and Crepeau, Borjan, for me, are ahead of him. Unless there's an injury, I don't think that anyone would not be called. But unless, Milan Borjan is retired or whatever, I think that's when Jonathan Sirois will get a call-up. If he's not called up against Trinidad and Tobago, I'm pretty sure he's going to be called up. Maybe not for the Copa America, but for the
window after,
maybe the Nations League or whatever it is after. I think he will be called up at one point. So he's very close. He's very close. And in my opinion, I agree with Elias in a certain way. I don't think we'll see him in Europe just because of he's not really involved in a play, unfortunately. But he does have this potential, so hopefully we'll see that from him. So a win for CF Montreal in Dallas, 2-1. Great start of the season for Laurent Courtois. We do have quite a few. We have 4 or 5 questions that were asked. So let's start with Marco's. I think we can start with Marco's question first. That's going to be in the second segment. Sorry, I forgot which one he asked.
Sorry.
That's going to be in the injuries section. Sorry.
Okay, I can remove it. Forget you all saw it. Okay. Do you want to forge ahead with it?
Oh, you know what? Yeah, let's forge ahead with it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, because I think we had a few comments come in that were along the same lines as well.
Exactly. So he says, with the probable prolonged absence of Opoku, who do you think will seize their chance to make their place in the 11? We also had a few comments about Opoku. I'm just going to talk about everyone. So Michael says he feels that it's a pity that Lassie is injured because he could have been the one replacing Opoku. We also have Tokyo Tylenol that says if Opoku is out for the long term, could Lassiter play in his position and play Chouanière as left wing back?
So many options.
There's so many options, as you said. What would be the best option in case Opoku? It feels that Opoku is going to be out for at least a month. In my opinion, I don't think it's going to be less than that because he didn't have a boot as Patrick said.
I mean, like, obviously they didn't do an MRI or anything, I don't think, at the stadium. So hopefully it's like more of a boot of fear than a boot of actual injury.
Boot of fear. The guy who had like his legs strapped like a million times.
I know. No, it looks so bad. I'm just hopeful. Okay. I'm trying to take off my pessimistic hat. There's a lot of options, especially because several of the players who could ostensibly play left wing back could be replaced by Raheem Edwards, who I think would be the de facto left wing back. And he hasn't played yet for Montreal, he didn't play last week anyway.
He was as a sub last week.
No, but he didn't play last week or last night. Sorry, last night.
Last night. Okay, last week he did play, but
No, that's exactly that's why. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. He was on the bench last night. Anyway, there's so many options, and I think it's going to depend a lot on perhaps the situation that Montreal's playing in. Like when you go to say a stadium like Seattle, for example, we know it's turf. We know the ball is going to bounce kind of funky. It's going to be a little bit harder to play, I think, as beautifully as you might want to. So perhaps that's a situation where you go more direct and you play a little bit more similarly to how we did in Dallas with that increased verticality in your play. So perhaps you go for 2 strikers up top and hope that your wingers can bomb some crosses into them, for example. But then in that case, I think probably it goes to Bryce Duke for the time being, or perhaps Dominic Yankov if he comes back. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think all of them have such different profiles and they offer such different like components to the game that I think a lot of it depends on what kind of defense you're facing off against.
Interesting. Elias, so for you, is that a possibility to see Lassiter play behind the striker? Or, Mathieu Choinière slotting in as a left wing back, or Lassie playing as a behind the striker? All those possibilities, are they studied in your opinion, or who will be that player that could play behind, Kokaro or whoever, Martinez or Vilsan? Vilsan played behind the striker also. So
Yeah.
what do you feel?
It's
Who
kind
do
of
you
tricky.
think? Yeah.
Because I do think that Vicente showed it. He obviously could play it. He's probably the most versatile of those options.
Yeah.
Just in the fact that he could play anywhere in attack pretty much. If you do go the Lassiter route, you have to play a proper 3-4-3 because Lassiter's best tools are in
on
space and out wide,
Yeah.
right? So if you want to have that overlapping tandem with him and Edwards, I think that could be really effective and really potent. But I don't think that his best talents are suited for under center, for in the middle of the park. Yankov, yes, Duke, yes, but I think that ultimately it's going to come down to, like you said, who they play at. For example, if we're going for Miami, because we don't know what the extent of it is, but I very much doubt that Mahalo Poku is going to play against Miami. Then I would like to see Jonathan Vilsaint, right, who can drop deep and who can relaunch the attack. And then you have Bryce Duke who can kind of play with him, and then you have your double pit, or you have your midfield block behind them. But if you look at the attack, I think that you need to have the people that can kind of relaunch a counterattack, because that's the only way you're going to get any kind of success.
It's tough to remove, Jules-Anthony Vilsaint after that performance, in my opinion, for next game.
Although he did get subbed off.
He did get subbed off, but he got subbed off just because he wanted who came in for him.
It was Wanyama and Sunusi.
Exactly. So he wanted to give a bit of time for Sunusi and fresh legs in a way, because Jonathan Vilsaint, ran a lot. Because he only
didn't play at all in preseason either,
right? So exactly, and he didn't play in the preseason. So interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting. In my opinion, Mathieu Choinière, his role is in the midfield. We're never going to see him as wing back.
Unless there's a crisis.
Unless there's a crisis.
Unless there's like 5 fullbacks injured, then maybe.
Exactly, because we have enough options as fullbacks to not use them in that position. Same. I don't see same as you, Elias. I don't see Lassiter play up front. Lassie maybe. But I think you have so many options, and we're forgetting about Redazu here. He can play up front too. You have Jules-Anthony Vilsaint, you have Bryce Duke, you have Yankov that's going to come back. I don't think it's going to be we didn't ask about the injury yet, but I don't think it's a very serious injury. You have Vilsaint, and you have so many options. Even Toy can play in behind the striker too. So I don't think we will see Lassiter play that position. Next question, I think from Tate. Let's go with that. We did talk about it a bit. I don't know if you want to add anything else. Can you please explain how Musa's goal was not offside? The only thing that I will add, the passive offside on the first ball, it doesn't exist anymore. So if everybody thinks about that passive offside of Peter Musa on the first ball, that's not a rule that we follow anymore. It's as soon as it touches the head of Kamunga, is he offside or not? He wasn't. So that's the only thing that I will add on that. I don't know if you guys want to add anything else.
Don't think anything else to add.
Exactly. So we are all in agreement that it shouldn't be. Yeah, it wasn't an offside on that goal. All three of us. Next will be Sam's question. That's very, very interesting. Our previous co-host, Sam Savvy. What do you guys read into Waterman being co-captain and seemingly no longer Wanyama assuming the role? Not looking for a drama here. More interested in knowing how nice of a statement it is for Waterman, who came here completely unheralded a few years back. Eve.
Yeah. Quite a statement, I think. No, sorry. I was I was a little bit reflective. No, I think it was a massive statement. You know, he's been here since 2020, so he's definitely one of the veterans of the squad, 100%. You know, he's kind of lived through a lot of ups and downs with that team. A lot of ups and downs now that I reflect back on it. And, you know, he's very much been an excellent servant of that defense. He's played pretty much every position that you've asked of him along that back line, including right back at times. And I think he is, you know, he is a leader among the team. He is obviously a very vocal presence, all the more so now that he is in the center of that 3-back. And yeah, I think it's just a testament to the service he's put in. Like, he's grown as a player while he's been with the club. He's evolved. Like, when we think about when he first played in 2020, or even that first match versus TFC in 2021, and we were asking a lot of, like, when they were still kind of playing in Florida, and we were like, oh my gosh. And then, you know, now we talk about him, and you couldn't remove him from the team sheet if you tried. And I saw Wellington's comment about Ousmane Dembélé getting a look in, and I was like, he's going to have a hard time getting a look in because, you know, Joel Waterman's a lock. Gabriela Corbo's a lock, I think. So for me, George Campbell is kind of the only player who could potentially look to maybe get switched out from time to time. So, yeah, honestly, for me, it's just credit to the development that Joel Waterman's made while he's been part of this team. And I think it's richly deserved.
Yeah, and for me, he has like he's captain material. The way he talks, the way you feel like he has charisma, he has everything that you need to control a dressing room, and he's well respected. And the fact that he's had so many tough times, for me, makes him even a better candidate, because he's like, look what I went through and how I managed everything that I went through and where I am right now. And I think that's going to be very, very interesting. Let's move next with I think we do have one more question, if not two. And it's from
one more from Dr. Foot.
Exactly. And I think that's going to be a good transition. Honestly, Dallas, an easy prey who didn't know how to generate much offense. The opponent will be much tougher next Sunday. Should Courtois send his B club to the slaughterhouse versus Inter Messi? I've seen that a lot. Like, why do we need to put our starting 11 against Messi in Miami? Messi and his friends in Miami. I don't know where it comes from. So I don't know, Elias, if you want to answer.
Let Elias answer this one.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't think so. I think that you send your best team, and I think you live with the consequences. I think that what happened to Orlando, ironically enough, took a lot of weight off a lot of teams' shoulders, because they're like, all right, we're not the only team that got their ass handed to them by Miami now, right? Because the Real Salt Lake game was a really good first half, and then kind of a whatever second half. The game against LA Galaxy, they got played off the field, and they were lucky to get away with the draw. And this was kind of a reaffirmation of just how good this team is. I think everyone's like, okay, so they're like
7 points in 3 games, huh?
Exactly. But at the same time, this 5-0 was like, okay, this team is not only viable in MLS, this team will torch you if they feel like it. Because you look at these goals too, and they were just messing around. It was the most unserious. They were just joking around. Some of those goals were like, oh my god, okay.
Right. But so, Montreal.
For Montreal,
should they send their B team?
You look at this Orlando game and you go, okay, they got their asses handed to them. We send any team out there and get their ass handed to them, it's whatever. So you may as well send your best players, your best 11. And worst case scenario, you got your ass kicked just like Orlando. Best case scenario, you send a massive message to the rest of the league saying, hey, we come to your city. Watch out.
Yes, Elias.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't understand where this comes from in a way. Like we have a
It's
week to
very
prepare Miami, and then we have
yeah.
another
And they
week to go to
and they
Chicago.
have
So
they have 4 games in a week and a half.
yeah,
They
and
have
you
Yeah.
a
know what?
lot.
Why are we, at that point, I don't think it's gonna be a slaughter from Inter Miami. I think that Montreal has the tools to create a bit of problems for Miami. I don't think they'll win, but you never know. But I
We
don't
said
think
that
we're
about
going
the
to be
first 2 games
slaughtered.
too.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be slaughtered. Um,
Yeah.
no, I don't think so. So, what do you think, Eve? Do you anything to add on this?
No. I
No.
agree. I like Elias' statement, send your best team, and it's gonna send a
Yeah,
message to the league if something does go right.
of course.
um
Okay.
we also have to consider the fact that these teams are like Orlando was juggling Champions League. I forget if Miami played Champions League or not. Sorry.
They didn't. They had a bye,
And
but they have
No,
they have
they got a bye.
Nashville too.
okay, they
Yeah,
had to buy.
They
Yeah.
have Nashville. They have
Yeah, so
Nashville
they
away
will.
before this
on
game.
Thursday, not even
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Oh, it's not like they're
Thursday.
going to Mexico or anything. Oh gosh,
Nashville away
well
is
then
never
they play
easy
Sunday,
though.
but yeah.
Yeah, Nashville away sucks. So
No, it does. Yeah, for sure. So anyway,
Yeah.
so for all we know, Miami might rotate some as well versus Montreal because, let's face it, Champions Cup. So I'm gonna say Champions League until I'm too old now to change my ways. I'm really sorry. Champions Cup silverware is a lot easier, or at least it's a lot more of a straightforward path than MLS silverware. So you have to wonder if they're gonna put their eggs in that basket, having made it as far as they have. Anyway, yeah, for me, you send your best team available when you can. Period.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think that's going to be very interesting. But for me, yeah, you send your team, as you said, to your 18. That's what we need. Moving on to the next point, injuries. Okay, we're not going to take too much time because we talked a bit about it earlier. Opoku being injured, Yankov being injured, Kokaro being injured, and removed from the pitch. Should we be concerned with that many injuries beginning of the season? We did have something a bit similar, I think, under Remy Garde, where the preseason was too tough to handle for some of these players, and they had so many injuries, and it became a big problem down the line. Are we worried, Eve?
I don't think you're making a super fair comparison because, yeah, like the Remy Garde preseason, well, you saw my face go. You knew I was like not agreeing
Yeah,
with you.
but you know what? It's a question that we should ask ourselves.
Sure. Okay,
It's
but
not.
okay. So, in case you were playing devil's advocate, I will just say I don't think that's a super fair comparison to make.
I agree
Not
with
you,
you.
Hady.
I agree
In the case of Opoku, we saw a guy fall on his leg and he got injured. Like that's not a muscle strain or anything like that. If these are injuries that are being picked up in training, that's a red flag, 100%. But if these are injuries that are being picked up in matches, it's a different story because it's completely different circumstances, completely different energy expenditure, and so on and so forth. So I really think what's most important is to compare the injuries that are picked up in training versus the injuries that are picked up in matches because the circumstances are so different. And obviously Montreal is a little bit less in control of the variables.
I agree with a part of your answer.
Okay.
Yes, of course. Injuries in training and injuries in games are different, but not all injuries in games. Like the injury of Opoku, yes, it's completely different. Completely agree with you.
No, but Kokoro pulled up, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and for me, Kokoro is a kind of injury that could be related to, a preseason being a bit too tough on his body. That's
Perhaps.
the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference between the two injuries. So I'm just wondering if that could be a problem down the line. Elias, do you have any thoughts on this?
Look, I mean, I don't love Marie-Vic as your training ground. It's not great. You're not training on grass, and let alone you're training on, just a random public turf. Yeah, it's probably one of the better turfs in Montreal, but that's not saying much.
The only turf in Montreal.
Well, I mean, because they had what?
The
They
only
had one
available turf
session
from
at
Montreal. The other turf's been rolled up
they had
somewhere.
one session at Saint-Nicolas, right? But look, the
Yeah.
turf situation in Montreal is dire at best. It's
Yeah.
I'm, like,
turfs
checking
are
the
closing
weather now.
everywhere, and the only ones left are ones that have been there forever, and they're basically like playing on concrete. So you don't have Olympic Stadium. You have just Marivic. I understand why they leave for the like destinations earlier than expected, because at least you could train on grass, or you could train on better turf outdoors.
Well, it's supposed to be
So
above 0 all week, if that's of any
oh
help
wow,
to this team.
it's
I have no idea
it's
like how ground maintenance goes, so that's my
not.
only ability to
Like they
contribute
won't
on
be
this.
training on grass until
No, I know.
end of March, right? So they
But,
have at
like
least
outdoor
2 or
turf,
3 weeks.
maybe. I don't know. I don't maintain
Yeah,
grounds.
again, they trained at Saint-Nicolas last week, and it was fine. But at the end of the day, you're still training outdoors on near freezing weather. That's hard on your knees.
Oh
That's not
yeah, for
easy.
sure.
Yeah.
So, look, obviously, I understand why they rather train indoors, but at the same time, Marivic is better turf, but it's not good.
No.
So I mean, I
Agreed.
understand why the situation like that, and like you see all the reports from the training where people were leaving training earlier, people were limping during training, people weren't exerting, they weren't going 100% during training. It's because you don't want to spend an hour and a half after on the physio bed or in the ice tub or doing whatever kind of recovery, because you're destroying your joints.
Interesting. And talking about that, about Marivic and everything, the team is back again in Montreal this week. They will be off tomorrow on Monday, but they'll be training on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in Marie-Victorin. And on Friday, they will have, just the media presence on Friday, and after they will go to Miami. What do you think about the fact that Laurent Courtois chose to come back to Montreal after every road game instead of staying on the road and recuperate? Right, in Dallas or whatever, or just maybe travel directly to Miami to rest a bit and not have that travel tiredness on Friday, just 2 days ahead of the game. What do you think about that, Eve?
I think there are pros and cons, and we talked a lot about them, like staying on the road versus going home and stuff.
Yeah.
I think maybe from a morale standpoint, especially the players who have been here and they have their families here and stuff like that, I'm sure it's really good for them to get to go back, see their pets, see their kids, see their wives, whatever it might be. So, I think there's pros and cons to approaching it either way. Obviously, all the added travel is far from ideal. But at the same time, with so many games in front of you, I can absolutely understand why a coach would opt for this choice to kind of keep his players motivated. And so, they don't get down in the dumps missing everyone back home.
Yeah, I think it's good also on the morale to be, home with your family, with your loved ones. I kind of didn't understand the decision. Of course, costs are not as big also, instead of, being away and paying a hotel for everybody and everything. So I kind of understand that. But, on the body, it feels that it's a bit more demanding, knowing also that you're playing on turf in Marie-Victorin also. So I don't know. I think, as you said, Eve, there's pros and cons on both decisions. But I kind of see also the pros of that decision, knowing that you're going to have 6 games away from home.
Yeah.
At one point, you need to see your loved ones. So
yeah, totally.
I kind of understand that. So that's very interesting. Anything to add on the injury situation, or can we move on with our last topic?
I'm ready.
Let's do this. Last topic, guys, the W Gold Cup, that competition. Before we start about the game, I just want to talk about one tweet that I sent, and a lot of people were in disagreement with me, but I want to hear your thoughts, guys. So I sent that Beth Friesman has a lot more pressure right now just because of the United States losing against Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, that puts more pressure on Canada and Beth Priestman to win it all. For me, it would be a very, very big disappointment if Mexico is able to beat the US, but Canada is not able to beat them.
Well,
am I going too far?
I think you are, because it looks like Canada's going to be facing them in the semis.
I knew it. I knew that Eve.
No, I'm watching it. I'm watching it as we're podcasting, and they're up 3-0 against Colombia, and they look back. They look back to their usual selves. Let's put it that way.
No, but Mexico has a very good team. They won also today against Paraguay 3-2. We'll talk a bit about that a bit later.
Okay,
but Elias, any other thoughts than Eve, or are you in agreement with her?
I think there's pressure. I don't think there's your job is on the line.
Winning it is
no. They just extended her contract.
Exactly.
So,
I do think that if they beat the US, then the expectation should be to win the tournament. Exactly. Because yes, Brazil, yes, Mexico, very strong, but you should be able to beat them if you beat the US. Even if you don't beat the US. For
God's sakes, they know Brazil like the back of their hands by now.
Exactly. So they're basically like, training partners at this point, the amount of games they played against each other. So the US is going to be a really good game, because this is, the most informed Canada's been in a while, and the US at the end of the day is a conveyor belt of talent, and they have a lot of players in great form too, a lot of players that are in mid-season form in Europe, just like Canada. So I mean, I don't have much to say about the game. It's going to be a really interesting contest. It's nice to see the defense finally consistently having to, manage threats and see how they can handle that. That's pretty much it,
I don't know. For me, it's a must now for Canada to win the tournament, more than before. Because the big threat was the US, how mighty the US is. For me, it was like, okay, if we lose against the US, we're losing against the US. They're amazing and everything. But now Mexico beating the US, even if Mexico is getting stronger and stronger, I know that I know you're in disagreement with me. Let me finish my sentence. But for me, the US being beaten, for me, adds that extra bit of pressure, because if Canada wants to be a team that battles for title, not only in CONCACAF, in the Olympics, in the World Cups and everything, now the US are not in their best shape. That's when you need to prove that you are, and you need to win a title in front of them. That's, for me, the extra bit of pressure that I would add on Beth Priestman. Go ahead, Eve. She's gonna bite her lip.
I just think you're reading an awful lot into one loss. I think you are. And there are definitely parts of the US national team that are in transition. Like, we know, they're waiting for their new coach to come in. They're kind of biding their time a little bit with that. But as Elias said, they're conveyor belts of talent. They are the home team in this competition, as they are most of the time. They have such and believe me, it pains me deeply to say this, okay? They have such a rich history of winning trophies behind them.
Of course.
That, like I said, they're up 3-0 here at halftime in the game versus Colombia.
Man.
This was Costa Rica. They only won one, I think.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I was gonna say Canada just squeaked by Costa Rica 1-0.
We'll talk about that a bit later, but it's just Canada didn't have the right mindset, but we'll talk about that a bit later.
Yeah, I don't know, Hady. I think you've built a lot out of this one match that the US didn't win.
Yeah, let's agree to disagree, because for me, as you said, the US are in transition, and it's right now the time to really beat them and show that we are still a top team. If not now, I don't think you'll have other opportunities, in my opinion. So, because they have their national pool is so diverse and so strong that I don't think we'll have any other chance. And right now, it's a big, big chance, and we need to take it and we need to win it. So that's my opinion. But as I said, agree to disagree. Let's talk about that game. Canada playing in the quarterfinals against Costa Rica. They did play against Costa Rica in a third match of the group stage. They won 3-0, as we said last week. We did. Yeah, did we talk about Costa Rica last week? Or it wasn't during. We did?
No, we didn't. It was Paraguay last week.
Exactly. It was Paraguay. So we didn't talk about that last week. But, Canada was really strong against Costa Rica in the first game. In the second game, in the quarterfinals, it was a bit harder. Now, Beth Friesman made a few changes to her starting 11 between the third game of the group stage and the quarterfinals. Kaylin Sheridan in goal, Buchanan as a left center back, Vanessa Gilles in the middle, Jade Rose as a right center back. As a right wing back, we had Ashley Lawrence. On the left, Gabrielle Carl. In the middle, we had Jessie Fleming and Quinn. And up front, we had Adrienne Leon, Chloe Lacasse on the wings, and Jordan Haidema as the striker. Were you surprised about that starting 11, Elias, or would you have changed anything with that starting 11, having watched the first 3 games of the group stage?
I get it that she wrote, like, there felt like there was a decent amount of rotation, but it's still an elimination game, It's still, you still have to put your best foot forward, and if you want to prepare for the US, you want to have the team that you're preparing for have a decent stretch of game time. If you want to make if you want to, maybe secure a decent enough lead, and then maybe rotate the squad to give.
But do you see a rotation in this?
I mean, not a heavy rotation, but I still I still was a little bit surprised with some of the choices.
Which choices? Which choices?
Like, if you put the lineup back up again,
okay.
Like, Jordan Haidema, I was a little bit surprised by. I guess it really was just Jordan Haidema. I don't know. I just remember feeling.
Shelina Zadorsky scored a brace. You would have thought that would have let her stick around.
Yeah, I guess I remember being more surprised when I saw the lineup last night. But yeah, I don't know why, but I just wasn't blown away. I don't remember.
I think because in the third game, Simi Ojo had a great game.
And
that might have been it. Yeah.
Having her on the bench was a bit, alarming. Same thing for Zadorsky. You talked about it, Eve, for sure. But I want to hear you about Jordan Haidema, Eve. I think she had a great tournament before that game. We'll talk about that game. And for me, it was well-deserved to see her up top.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was. I think you're right. I think I've asked a lot of questions about Jordan Haidema and her role. I think I've been very critical of her, but I think particularly in this system where she's supported by Leon and Lacasse, the 3 of them seem to have formed a proper chemistry together.
Yeah.
And she seems like she doesn't have as much responsibility on her to drop as deep as she had been in some other systems played by Beth Priestman, which has really allowed her to be an essential striker. Unfortunately, Olivia Smith was on concussion protocol yesterday. And so, she's had a breakout tournament. And I think Jordan Haidema, I don't know if maybe she sensed the fire was getting lit under her position or what, but she has stepped up. I think her positioning has been spot on this tournament. She could have had several goals. She's been everywhere she needed to be. I think she's worked really hard. Like I said, she's just demonstrated a lot more cohesion with the other 10 players around her than I felt that she had demonstrated in maybe the last
10 years. Sorry.
I was going to say 4 or 5 cycles, but in quite a while.
Yeah.
We can agree on quite a while for sure.
Yeah, no, I was joking.
Yeah. I was going to say she was playing youth league 10 years ago, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so no, I do agree that like her stock has risen in this tournament, which is good because I think she is a player who Bev Priestman rates very, very highly, and she is somebody who I feel is almost a de facto starter in most women's national team lineups.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, not 10 years ago, she made her debut with Canada in 2017, and she was only 16 back then. So, of course, I was exaggerating just for fun. But no, again, for me, it was, the starting 11, as I said, the only two players that I wanted to see were Simia Woodrow and Sadorski, but the rest for me, it was kind of like normal.
It was
the only thing. Yeah, the only thing is that Chloe Lacasse in the first two games that she played as a wing back. It was the first time that we saw her as a forward and not as a wing back. So I feel that was a bit sketchy in a certain way. I think it was her worst game, Chloe Lacasse.
If I could use a word,
of the tournament. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it was destabilizing.
Exactly. That's exactly the word that I was looking for. But do you agree with me, Eve and Elias, of course, that it was the worst game of Chloe Lacasse in the tournament?
Yeah, I do. I forgot she was out there at times.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was more
quiet
bad. Than bad. Yeah, I just think it's more of a testament to how good she's been this tournament than an indictment of this game specifically. But also in games like this where it's bogged down and there's not much going on and you need someone, that's where you kind of hope that she, goes on a dribble or something or creates something out of nothing. And she did, here or there, but just not enough, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Beth Priestman talked during the pregame presser. She talked about the fact that she wanted to go back to basics and play down the wings and cross the ball more. We saw that a lot in the first half for Canada. And it kind of worked because Jordan Heydeman had quite a few chances in the first half, like maybe 3 or 4 clear-cut chances. Unfortunately, she missed all 4 of them. There's just one that she missed because, that was a great save from the goalkeeper. That header, I think, around the 40th minute or 41st, I don't remember which, towards the end of the half. But the rest of the time, Jordan Heydeman missed so many chances. After having such a good tournament, Eve, how bad is it for her confidence going forward, Jordan Heydeman?
Well, I mean, nobody covered themselves in glory yesterday, unfortunately. So
I disagree. Kaylin Sheridan.
Okay. Yes. Okay. You're correct. Sorry. Okay. From an attacking standpoint, nobody covered themselves in glory yesterday. But yes, you are correct. Built the statue for Kaylin Sheridan, which we can talk about maybe at some point. But for Jordan Huitema, I would hope that this would not derail her confidence too much because it's a one-off. It's a weird circumstance to be playing the same team, just a couple of days apart. Obviously, Costa Rica came into it with a pretty blatant game plan that almost worked, to be fair.
But it was always going to be that.
It was always going. No, it wasn't surprising at all. But I think for a striker, that's kind of almost like your worst nightmare of a game is to just have a team just set up and just stifle you, to make that their life's mission, basically. So, I don't think this one should derail her confidence too much because of what a good tournament she's had so far. And it's not like she's stuck out like a sore thumb amongst the rest of the team. If she had been so bad by so much, maybe it's a different story. But like we said earlier, as we agreed, it just wasn't clicking at all on the offense across the whole line.
Yeah, no, I agree and disagree at the same time because I think in the first half we had, as I said earlier, quite a few big clear-cut chances. And if 1 or 2 goals were scored, we wouldn't have that discussion altogether.
No.
And unfortunately, Huitema missed quite a few chances. She was the only one getting those clear-cut chances, not anybody else, didn't have that. Elias, let's talk about the second half and the difference between the first half and the second half. Okay, in that first half, as I said, a lot of chances, Hydema missing a lot, and then a change at halftime from Beth Priestlin. Big change, big statement, in my opinion. Removing Jordan Hydema for Deanne Rose at the 46th minute. What did you make of that substitution? Do you agree with it? You don't agree with it? And knowing that the second half, and we'll talk about the rest of the half, but the second half, Canada didn't create much. We didn't see much from Canada in the second half.
No, and the big difference is, Bev Priestlin talked about it. If she wants to develop play on the wings and generate crosses, your main target player is Jordan Hydema. She's great in the air. Her positioning is exceptional, and that she's a poacher. There's no other way to cut. That's what she does. So I think having Deanne Rose come on, who is that's just not the way she plays.
It's not her profile at all.
Exactly.
No.
So I think that kind of just that made everyone maybe that forced an adjustment that maybe the team wasn't ready to make. And look, when you're playing against not just a low block, but like I'm not only parking the bus, I'm parking like the entire terminus, then there's just not space. And you saw it, right? All these half chances that they kind of snatched at, it was just that. It was just a half chance that you hope you can get on target. You hope you can, because there isn't any room to just play in the box.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to kind of, you need that direct ball. And Adrienne Lalonde, who's been, in some of the best form she's had with Canada, but again, she thrives when she can create space with the dribble, or she can, she could find that room. And if there's no room, then, there's nobody now that you can aim at. So I think that I understand what Beth Priestlin was trying to do, in that, you wanted a bit of a more technical approach, but all that did was just force Costa Rica to hunker down even more. And you're just kind of cutting down on on the already very limited space that you had. So I mean, they got the job done technically, right? Which is why we have that title of the podcast. But yeah, that half was that substitution at halftime was a little bit confusing. Again, I understand why the substitution was made,
but then you need to change your game plan.
Exactly, and the thing is, it didn't look like a changed game plan. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So
how do you think, Eve, we should have played after that change? With Hydema going off and Deanne Rose coming in, and how can you explain that substitution? Because getting Deanne Rose is the kind of player that's going to thrive in space.
Exactly.
You don't have any space in that game. You didn't
There's
have
7 defenders on the field right now.
No.
So how do you explain that?
Like, as crappy as it sounds, like, I feel like Canada should have, tried to go so direct, like just so incredibly direct, like go over the heads of those 7 defenders. You counted them, Elias. I'm going to take your word for it. They definitely lined up like 7, so I believe it. Just play so direct, get your best set piece players in there, because Canada had no shortage of corners. I forget how many they had, but it was in the double digits. They had a stupid amount of corner kicks as well. So honestly, like, as crappy as it sounds, for as austere as Costa Rica was being in that match, like, I really think that most of Canada's players are players who thrive in space, whether it's Jessie Fleming, using her vision to open up a pass, whether it's Chloe Lacasse and her footwork. Adrienne Lalonde had some fancy footwork throughout this tournament as well. We have lots of great finishers, but I think, like, as far as the development of the play, Canada does need a lot of space to score from open play, and they've had trouble scoring from open play against low blocks historically. So for me, honestly,
we didn't have trouble in a group stage.
But I feel like the groups. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying it's different. But
yeah, I feel like the group stage, like, obviously El Salvador is just not. They're not there yet, right? They're just not there yet. Even if they wanted to play a low block, it was not going to be as organized. I think Paraguay did maybe want to play a little bit, but then they settled back, and obviously then they had to throw the kitchen sink if they wanted a chance in hell of getting out of the group. And then Costa Rica in the first match were a lot less. I think it comes down to really where the teams are in their development cycles, because they tried to play a low block, but it was a terribly disorganized low block in the first match versus Costa Rica. And then kind of after, I think, maybe assessing Canada's qualities, they shored up some of those loose ends and made for a very, very frustrating 2 hours of soccer for those of us who had to watch, and probably for those of them who had to play it as well.
For me, the difference between the two was set pieces. It's as simple as that, because you look at the first game, 2 goals from Zadorsky from set pieces.
Yeah.
And that was the main difference. When you're playing against a low block, those 13 corners that we had, we should have scored on that.
Sure. But I mean, like,
we had Vanessa Gilles.
Yeah.
And we should have had Sharina Zadorsky. She should have been in there. As simple as that. So, squad selection, in my opinion, was a bit tough for Beth Friesman.
If you weren't going to change your game plan and sub out Jordan Heidema, I would have thought maybe Evelyn Vienne, because she is. Oh, I mean, as she showed,
she's a fox in the box.
She's much better. She's much better in the air, and she can be that poacher when
she
can
score with her head.
And she's a target player.
Exactly.
She has a profile that's a bit similar to Jordan Heidema, and she's the one that can, her movement in the box create space. She's the one that can, put the ball in the back of the net, either with her head, with her foot, whatever it is, and she's in great form. So I didn't understand the move. Now, she did make a second move after, with Quinn going out for Simia Woodrow. I think that was the right call. You needed that kind of
that drive.
That drive exactly in the midfield. But, a player that's able to get the ball in the midfield, dribble a couple of players, and just go in. Quinn is the kind of player that's going to stay, at the back, give long balls and direct the play. Simia Woodrow is the player that really going to drive the ball forward in the midfield. And you needed that extra bit of strength. And afterwards, in the 76th minute, that's when Evelyn Vienne came in for Chloé Lacatte. And let's talk about her impact on the game. Not only the goal in the extra time, but I thought that as soon as Evelyn Vienne got in, Canada was a bit more crisp in their attacks, and were a bit more dangerous, right, Eve?
Yeah, well, I mean, she had a shot that narrowly missed the target, like just a couple of minutes after she went on, and it definitely felt like the attacking intent, like, just if you have a sight at the goal, go for that goal, was there. So I don't know if Beth Priestman maybe also passed along some additional instructions with that stuff. Maybe there was a slip of paper we didn't see. But I wholeheartedly agree with you that it looked like a lot more of a focused attack, I would say, because I felt like it was very chaotic and it was like very desperate prior to Evelyn Vienne's substitution. But when she came in, it really felt like they were kind of honing in on their target player, I suppose, right?
Exactly. And there was someone in the box to receive those crosses. Again, I think her movement made a lot of good for Canada and created a lot of good for Canada's offense. Even if, yes, of course, sometimes technically her first touch is not on point. Yes, we do see that. She's not that perfect player. She's not, she's far from being, number one player in the world. But I think that she did very well coming in. And the other Quebecer, let's talk about Gabrielle Carl. What a great game she had, Elias. On that left flank, she was so good. She nearly scored a goal, too. Had a great chance at one point, Gabrielle Carl. Was very dangerous going forward. Very good on her left foot, very good on her right foot. And really tireless on the left flank, right?
Yeah, there had been a lot of questions right around who's gonna operate in that flank position. Are they gonna go with just Chloé Lacasse and have her just go full on attacking and not leave anybody? Are they gonna have someone behind her to maybe overlap, stuff like that? And I think that with all the injuries that happened to like don't know, the weirdly targeted injuries to players that could play at that left wing back position for the tournament. She's really stepped up, and I think she's made a very good case as to why that position should be hers. Now the onus is kind of on her to do really well in the She Believes Cup, and kind of maybe continue to solidify her role as, if not a starter, as definitely a contender for that position. I think that that's well within her reach for the Olympics. That's a very realistic goal. Again, it'll depend on the health of everybody and
Yeah,
the rate at which
for
people
sure.
come back. But I think that even with everybody healthy, if she plays like that, if that's like her consistent standard, that she's making a very good case as to why because again, you don't need a rock star at every single position. Sometimes you just need someone super reliable and that gets the job done, and that's what she did yesterday.
I think she was awesome. I think she was awesome, and I see a lot of people saying, if Jade Riviere was fit, she's the one on the right, Ashley Lawrence on the left, and everybody forgetting about Gabrielle Carl and Sidney Collins. I completely disagree with that. For me, Ashley Lawrence is always going to have to be on the right.
Yeah.
And on the left, it's going to be between Collins and Gabrielle Carl. It's as simple as that. Jade Riviere is a replacement of Ashley Lawrence. Too bad. Moving on, Jessie Fleming, the captain. What did you think about her performance, Eve? She had a couple of chances in extra time. And at the end, she's the one that delivers the goal delivers the cross to Evelyn Vian, who scored a header, and the only goal of the game.
At the end of the day, that's what you need your captain to do. You need your captain to be a difference maker, right?
Yeah.
And obviously on a set piece, it was so far out that she was going to deliver that set piece quality, which she did. She delivered it practically perfectly placed for Evelyn Vian. So for me, obviously she didn't play a lot with Chelsea coming into this tournament. She just transferred to Portland, who are in preseason. So I don't think necessarily that we're seeing Jessie Fleming at her absolute 110% best. But all the same, she's been influential when we needed her to be influential. And that's what you ask of your playmaker. That's what you ask of your captain. So I have no qualms with her performance, honestly.
Yeah, no, me neither. I think that she should have been a bit more present on the offensive front. She waited a bit too long to
I think it was just so stifling, though.
Exactly. But she at one point, you expect from your captain to show the way and to lead the way. And I think she should have done a bit more, or, talk to Bev to get a more, a better, position up front to maybe, make the difference in a way. So maybe. I don't know. That's the only thing, but it's tough. It's tough. I think she had a good game. I completely agree with you. Defense, forgot to talk about Kaylin Sheridan and the defense altogether. I think the defense did well. They did well.
They didn't have much to do.
But they did, because they had to control, those counterattacks. And it only happened twice when the defense wasn't able to control the counterattacks. The first one, where unfortunately unfortunately for Costa Rica, they weren't able to create anything out of it, but it was tough going in behind the defense. It was tough for them to really find the composure to really create something. And the second time, with that great chance around the end of regular time and that save from Kaylin Sheridan, that's what you need from your defense. You need them to be strong, and at the same time, you need your goalkeeper to do that crucial save whenever the defense is outrun, right, Elias?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's why they're there, right? And that's why you can't kind of overlook them, even when you have 60% possession and 25 shots and however many corners, like all that stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, it's an elimination game, and Costa Rica almost proved in like 1/2 second why you switch off for literally no time at all, and you're going home. So I think that, it was a good reminder, and maybe a good little last minute wake up call before the US. That yes, we still need you guys. Remember back there that you're not only playing passes forward, you also have to defend, and there's gonna be a whole lot of it on Saturday. So.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun. Let's talk about the goal. Evelyn Vian scoring that goal with that header. A Jordan Heidema kind of goal, right?
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
the kind of goal that you would expect from Jordan Heidema.
Yeah. Or Vanessa Gilles.
Or Vanessa Gilles, yes, exactly. So how important is that goal, and how important is it for Evelyne Vian?
Massive.
Ahead of Paris 2024, the fact that Bev Friesman has to choose 18 players.
Yeah. I think it's huge, especially given how Olivia Smith has, I think, risen during this tournament. And certainly we do hope all the same that she recovers very, very quickly from whatever knock she's carrying.
Concussion.
Yeah, exactly, her concussion. I think, Evelyne Vian, she's always been on the periphery with Bev Priestman, no matter what kind of form she's been in. So to give this demonstrable proof that she fits with the squad by scoring, such a crucial goal. This is probably the biggest goal she's ever scored for this team, period. So I think that raises her case. I'm not terribly optimistic all the same, just based on kind of the history of how Bev Priestman's handled her call-ups. But that being said, she's definitely, hopefully, given Bev Priestman a little bit more to think about.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. 18 players. I doubt very much that we'll see Evelyne Vian in that. Olivia Smith, it's a bit worrying, by the way. Second concussion in a few months. That worries me a lot. And she's so young. I don't know. Hopefully, she'll be able to treat that and move on and get better. So that worries me a bit. Let's talk about the semifinals. Semifinals for Canada. USA, that's going to be on. Oh, they're winning 3-0. Come on, man.
Yeah, okay.
So that's going to be on Wednesday, 7 p.m. Let's go for your predictions. Go, Elias. I think we'll lose 3-1.
I think it's going to end 2-2 and the US is going to win on penalties.
Wow.
I'm going to say 3-2.
4?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, well, the look of chagrin on my face earlier didn't tell
I'm not saying
anyone.
Who's going to win, just 3-2.
I wish. No, I do think the US are going to take it. They, like I said, for me, the Mexico loss is a bit of an anomaly for them, and they seem to be back to their US ways in this match that they're playing right now. So, yeah, I'm going to give it to the US, but I sincerely hope it's not a walk in the park.
I think it's going to be a walk in the park, in my opinion. So hopefully it will not be. But I think that's what's going to happen. I think that game against Costa Rica was unfortunately very, very concerning. And even Bev Priestman in the post game was very, very concerned. But we'll see. We'll see. And last but not least, before wrapping up, your prediction for Inter Miami, Montreal.
I'll say 3-1 Miami.
Wow.
Well, you stole my guess.
You're welcome to share.
Yeah.
I don't have a trademark on 3-1.
I'm gonna be different. 2. No, you know what? 2-2 draw.
I'm going with a draw, a 1-1 draw.
Alrighty.
I'm going with a 1-1 draw. Good. So that was a great show. We covered a lot. I hope you guys liked our product. Guys, just to let you know, guys and girls, of course, our content is always going to be free, but if you want to help us grow the product, please feel free to join our Patreon page and to help us, grow the content and get better at this. As simple as that. So that's it for tonight. Thank you very much for being here with me, Elias and Eve, and see you next week for episode 170 of The Ball is Round.